Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube video. I have a very special video for you today. I just was eating lunch and thinking about how I wanted to start this video about my journey with sensorimotor OCD, also known as somatic OCD, also known as hyper-awareness. And as I was walking down into my room, into my office to make this video, which I pulled out the whiteboard again. It's been a long time since I've had the whiteboard. I decided one of the most important things in my life was sharing my knowledge about sensorimotor OCD. My direct expertise, one could say, on going through, ending up in a mental hospital. Multiple times the police were called to my house for suicide ideations, trying to jump out of a moving car, not working, gaining a bunch of weight, and basically my entire life coming to a crashing halt for the better part of 2 years. I'm here to share with you the knowledge I have on sensorimotor OCD, the path I took, the confusion I had to go through to eventually hit sensorimotor recovery. Now, what is sensorimotor recovery? That is the absence of chronic anxiety. There's no shame and guilt, obviously not really related to sensorimotor. No intrusive thoughts, sensation, images, or urges. No doubts, no fear of it coming back, and no fear of it lingering. The end goal is to not never notice your sensations again, which we will talk about. And I am very, very happy to bring this sensorimotor video to you. Now let's get started. My journey. My entire life I've had OCD. I've been very odd. I was a pathological liar. I lied to feel more comfort. I avoided underwear for 10 years. I didn't like the sensation, which played very much in my body dysmorphia. Anytime there was something in my life that I didn't want to do, I would hide from it. I was absolutely obsessed with certainty, as we know, the certainty disorder. Very important to cover that. It was something that really was taking over my life when I didn't even know it was taking over my life. I think this is something that many people can relate to. The reason why this topic means so much to me is because this was really where I believed that my life was over. In June of 2019, one summer day when I lived in Florida, I was in the pool. Now I have 3 and 4 sets of tubes in each ear. I had a lot of hearing problems and I do have tinnitus, and that's how it started. So I woke up to go to the bathroom one night and I heard ringing in my ears. Then what happened was I had a panic attack, and that's when my journey began. So my chronic suffering began in June of 2019. So just about 3 years ago and 1 month. My sensorimotor journey started about September, about 28, 29 months ago, but I've only been taking my recovery seriously for the better part of 2 years and 3 months. It took me about 18 months to 2 years to recover from sensorimotor OCD, to the point where it was no longer a factor in my life, to a point where it no longer bothered me at any place in time. So what had happened was, I'll kind of speed up the tinnitus. I realized that the sound of tinnitus itself was not the thing that was causing my panic. It was the avoidance behaviors. It was the lack of using of knives. I stopped using headphones. I stopped driving with the windows open. Once I realized my avoidance behaviors were playing directly into my fear cycle, I started to bring those down. But it still lingered because I was scared about noticing that sensation for the rest of my life. Once I broke down the fear of noticing the sensation for the remainder of my life, once I brought those demands and shoulds to preferences, that's when things started to morph. And what it morphed into was sensorimotor OCD. I was driving. Many of you have heard me talk about this story before, and I remember having a thought. I thought, what are some things that people habituate to? And that was hand on the steering wheel, foot on the gas pedal, and then blinking. And then boom, and boom, and boom. And before I knew it, I had a panic attack and I was stuck with blinking OCD. I remember I got back to my apartment. I totally freaked out. I was laying on the floor like this in the driveway area, and my wife was very confused. I mean, imagine someone saying to you, I can't stop thinking about my blinking. I mean, your partner or whoever you're with would think, what the fuck are you talking about? So when I woke up in the morning and I was still very hyper aware from the moment I opened my eyes, I had another panic attack, and that's when my sensorimotor journey began. So blinking lasted about a month. Then it switched over into saliva and swallowing, and I had saliva and swallowing OCD for the better part of 2 years. I wasn't chronically stuck for those 2 years, but 2 months after November of 2019, I was put into a mental hospital. If I would have had the tools I understood now, I don't think anyone really needs to go to a mental hospital. They're very rare cases. They usually end up being reassurance kind of nightmares, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just when you understand OCD, you realize you never need to go to a mental hospital. You can withstand all that discomfort, all the physical symptoms of anxiety, everything like that. You don't need to go. Does that mean that some people won't need to go if they don't know what they're doing. Of course, it was great. They can be very beneficial. But once you understand the tools, even if you have a relapse in the worst setback of your life, you'll never need to go there because you will understand the principles of unconditional self-life and other acceptance. And during that time, after the mental hospital, I developed a serious video game addiction. I wasn't going to school anymore. Once I graduated, I wasn't working. I had 2 kidney stone surgeries, which made me really hyper aware of all my sensations, where I pissed blood for about 2 weeks. It was a really rough time in my life. Before that, I had gotten COVID. No, I got that was the kidney stones in February 2020. Then I got serious COVID in November, working on my recovery for about 6 months. It was on oxygen for 3 days, and an at-home ventilator machine, the big black boxes. So I had a really rough 2 years of my life. There's much worse things out there. I could still do things. I could still watch Netflix and suffer. There's some people that can suffer, that are suffering, and they don't have any access to clean water or food. There's always something to be grateful for, and I'm very grateful that I was going through sensorimotor recovery while living where I live. Even when I thought it was the end of the world, looking back, I had a lot to be grateful for. Now, I want to go into the common misconceptions. I'm going to kind of move this in a little bit like that. That way you get a better understanding about what we're talking about. So inside these misconceptions, we have the sensation isn't the primary issue. Exposures aren't the answer, especially with sensorimotor. Losing the term habituate. I've never heard anyone use the word habituate correctly. Yes, it is a term. You want to lose that. If your goal is to habituate, what you're telling yourself is, I never want to notice the sensation again. I want to go back to automatic. And your brain will go, well, that's not really going to happen because you're scared of noticing it. So breaking down the fear, which we will go over. Self-reassurance statements like, it's okay, everyone breathes. Everyone salivates. Everyone has a pulse. Those are self-reassuring statements. There's some truth to those, but that's not actually how you get yourself better from sensorimotor OCD. And then the time, practice, and patience. So let's go through each one of these, maybe one at a time. The sensation isn't the issue. Breathing, blinking, swallowing, salivating, heartbeat, the big 5. And this can be applicable to all other sensations. I've heard all of them. I work with a lot of sensorimotor sufferers. Hyper-awareness of their consciousness, their body movements, certain clothes, temperature. Getting comfortable with the sensation is such a key part of the journey. But the fear cycle is alive because of the belief you have on the sensation. You believe, that if you're stuck, just had some fire pizza. It's so funny. Will believe if you notice a sensation for the rest of your life will be ruined. And that's what keeps the fear cycle alive. The reason why exposures aren't necessary and why I tell people to lose the word habituate, it's understandable, right? You hear it all the time. A lot of the sensorimotor information, which is unfortunately incorrect. The vast majority, outside of myself and maybe a few other people, I've almost never heard sensorimotor explained correctly. I hear good explanations about what it is, automatic bodily sensation becoming hyper-aware, but they don't actually understand about the fear itself driving the cycle. So they go for just sit in bed and meditate to your saliva or your breathing 20 minutes a day. Just walk around telling yourself, hey, everyone breathes. And again, while these statements have validity, they're not the genesis of why you're stuck, so they can be a means to its end. Now, when I talk about exposures aren't necessary, and the habituate word, the sentence I say, which I was going to say before, got a little sidetracked. When I talk to someone, I say, why do you want to habituate to your breathing? They say to me, because I want to never notice it again. And then I break down and I say, does that sound like unconditional acceptance, unconditional life acceptance, and what we call the fear of fear? I highly recommend going to our playlist section and watching our videos on acceptance and watching our videos on fear of fear, which can give you a better breakdown of what I'm about to talk about. So the fear of fear is, if I notice my breathing, for an example, for the rest of my life is ruined. So when you say you want to habituate, your goal is to never notice your breathing again. But that's actually not unconditional acceptance. Unconditional acceptance is, even if I do notice my breathing for the rest of my life, even if it feels like I'm manually breathing, a lot of breathing sufferers will say that, it feels like I'm manually breathing, like I forgot how to breathe. Same thing with blinking, salivation, swallowing. I hear it all. I feel like I don't know how to blink anymore. I feel like I don't know how to swallow correctly my saliva anymore. You're going to have to get comfortable with that, and in time, break down the belief that even if it felt manual, as frustrating as that is, it's not desirable, it's not the end of the world as we imagine. Those catastrophizing, overgeneralization, black and white, awfulizing, I can't stand it-itis belief systems that we pull from the books on the reading list at OCDrecovery.com is one of the main reasons why we continue to stay stuck in the cycle. The self-reassurance statements. This is something I get asked a lot, especially with the breathing one. People will say they're walking around in stores, They're at the mall, they're on vacation, and they're constantly telling themselves, it's okay to notice my breathing. Everyone notices their breathing. And that is understandable. But again, going back to everything we just talked about, that's not the reason why you're stuck. You're stuck because if you're afraid of noticing your breathing for the rest of your life will be ruined. So what we want to do is now move over into how to recover. And this right here is probably the most important part. Let me bring this in a little bit more. The most important part of the entire video, because you're wondering, well, how do I actually get better from sensorimotor OCD? The first thing is getting comfortable with the sensation. And that means bringing it any place, anywhere, anytime. Vacations, weddings. If you're getting married in 3 days and you're hyper aware of your breathing, you're more than likely going to be hyper aware of your breathing your entire wedding day. OCD knows that you don't want it there, so you're going to have to bring it with you, and that's a key part of this recovery process. If you're not going to work, going back to work. I've never seen someone who has poor lifestyle factors recover from OCD or make any sort of long-term recovery progress. The reason why lifestyle structures are so great, such as hobbies, getting outside, going to work, it gives us a purpose and meaning, a purpose to ourselves, not a universal purpose. There's no such thing as a universal purpose. This is broken down with unconditional self-life, other acceptance. And once we realize that we're going to have to feel our breathing and make it feel like, not make it, but as if it's manually breathing for, say, a couple years, it's not the end of the world. It's frustrating, but you could still do everything you want to do. Next is books on the books on the reading list. So the first book on the reading list, which is How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, yes, anything. I can hear the dogs barking out there. This is why I keep the door shut when I do videos. Is very, very critical when it comes to actually breaking down this entire process. So you'll want to read those books on the reading list. And those books are How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything. The second book is Claire Weeks' Self-Help for Your Nerves. The Myth of Self-Esteem. Man's Search for Meaning. Paul David's At Last a Life. And Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. The first book on the reading list is more than likely the most important. That book will actually break down belief systems and show you how to actually get better from sensorimotor OCD or any OCD for that matter. And then what I did was I put a couple of belief systems in here, the ones that I used to hold. And these are applicable to any type of physical discomfort in your life. I can't stand this. My life is ruined. The analogy I always use is when you are telling yourself all day long that you can't stand it, you have a bucket. And inside that bucket, you are dropping pennies. And one penny doesn't seem like a lot. And when you drop 10,000 pennies into a bucket, that bucket gets heavy. Every time you say, I can't stand it. I can't stand going to the store noticing my sensations. I can't stand noticing at the barber shop. I can't stand it noticing at work. I need to be concentrating. Trying to force that present moment can really be a problem. And real quick sidetrack, which I didn't put on here, mindfulness meditation is more than likely the least most important part of the sensorimotor recovery journey. You're already so internalized. Every OCD fear, you're internalized. When we're trying to use mindfulness meditation, what I've noticed with sensorimotor OCD, again, mindfulness meditation is great. Being mindful of the fact that you are hyper aware and you can't accept right now is critical. But if you're trying to force mindfulness meditation in order to escape the sensation, you're more than likely performing a very, very subtle compulsive avoidance behavior without even knowing it. Something I have fallen into and many people I talk to. So what we want to do is change that irrational belief to a preference. And that preference looks like, I prefer not to notice this again, but if I do, it's not horrible. Of course, I would prefer to not notice my sensations at work. Of course, I would prefer to not notice my sensations where I'm somewhere I want to be present. But as there's no universal principle stating I must be present, as there's no universal principle saying I shouldn't notice my breathing, my saliva, my blinking, my swallowing, or my heartbeat, any of the big five or other sensations, there are no rules to state that I must be consciously 100% present at any given moment. Once you start to break those barriers down, I use this analogy today. People with OCD are standing in a field. Inside that field, there are dominoes. There's life-size dominoes. Those dominoes are cultural beliefs, societal beliefs, religious beliefs, and fears. And what people do is they're trying to navigate those things, but they won't actually move through the field of dominoes because they're scared of rejection, scared of being stuck forever. Once you get to OCD recovery and you break your fears down, the dominoes fade away. The dominoes don't disappear. They're still in the field, but they're lying down. And when you're looking at those, you go, oh, this is why I was scared about being stuck forever. Yes, I would not like if it came back full force, but I don't think I'd need to go to the mental hospital again. I do think I could continue with my work, go for hiking, spend time with my beautiful wife and my dogs. My wife has been a great support, very fortunate for her, and overall like that. Something I was thinking about when I'm driving, which I drive a lot for my work, I'm always thinking about analogies and metaphors to use for the WhatsApp groups, for the webinars, and stuff like that. And the last thing I want to talk about is the patience, the ups and downs, and everything like that. You will be confused. You will think you can't get better. You will have panic attacks. You will have moments of hyper-awareness with no anxiety. You'll have moments of anxiety with no hyper-awareness per se, mixture of both, all that. None of that actually matters. It's very easy to get caught up in the symptoms. What does matter is the belief you hold about your fears. Now, I can't stand it. This is horrible. If I notice this for the rest of my life is ruined. Changing those preferences will eventually lead you to where I've come, sensorimotor recovery. I promise you there's hope. I promise you you can get better. Bring down those avoidance behaviors. Bring down those compulsions. Automatic rumination, when you're out and you're trying to concentrate and you're trying to force it, and the sensation is bombarding and bombarding and bombarding and bombarding. Allowing that to bombard, that will have to happen until the fear comes down. Rumination is usually explained incorrectly. There's a difference, in my opinion, about outwardly trying to analyze, figure something out, versus automatic rumination. So for us, the automatic rumination looks like the intrusive intrusive sensations and urges, and then some of the intrusive thoughts of, what if I'm stuck forever in that? Those will need to play out. Remember, the best piece of advice I can give you is OCD takes orders from beliefs, not thoughts. Thank you so much for following me on this journey. I hope this video helps. I went through and watched one of my videos from 11 months ago, and I almost started crying yesterday because I couldn't believe just how much I changed in my delivery. Change is there. It takes a while to see change, but you can do it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.